Alrighty. So today, yesterday I was hoping to get to this, but I just didn't. I did one stream. I didn't manage to get back around to doing a second stream. It was like 8 p.m. by the time I was actually ready. So kind of too late for me yesterday. So we're gonna do object file stuff today. So I'm here in my main code base. Yeah, we're building it. Right now it's set up to run the ASCII test from the cool table printing and histogram printing stuff from a couple weeks ago. What I'm going to switch to now is working on a new object file printing thing. So I'm going to take a look through step one. I think just this might be a few days worth of work, or this might be weeks or months of work, or I don't know how far this is going to go. But let me just outline where I'm going to start from, and also what at least one fruit that I'm trying to pluck from this tree today is, or right now I'm coming here, there is one low-hanging fruit style problem that I have in mind. That might be the only thing. I might just go in and get that and get out, or we might spend a lot of time in the object files before I get back to the RPG simulator. I'm not sure. But we have, okay, the first big thing I need to do in this outline is I need to go through everything that exists. So I already written a bunch of object file handling stuff, specifically for COF and PE. I started fiddling with ELF, but we didn't get all the way to a completion state on that. And I also worked on a couple of dumpers and constructors. So for the PE files, I can generate object files with a little program that I've got, and I can parse object files and dump them. And it's all in there somewhere, but I want to bring those tools a little bit more up to the forefront. I also have this OBJ from Raw, which I'd love to do a more serious production pass over sooner or later. That's not the low-hanging fruit, but that's a piece of this whole story too. And so step one, need to just get a full inventory of what I did build and how well it's working and where it all is, what it's all called. I need to get it all loaded back into my mind by exploring, because I just don't remember. And then once we've done that phase, I need to come up with a plan of what I want to get done during this time inside the object file tech. It might be that I decide all the projects that are coming up are so big and all consuming that it'd be a whole year if I took them on now and that I'm not ready. Or I might find a nice gentle step that I can take for a month, or I might decide to just get one thing and get out. I don't know what the reasonable goal is, because I don't know the state of the board and the pieces. So step two, figure out what the action plan is, and then step three, play out the chores that I want, or maybe abandon the RPG simulator in favor of object tech for the rest of the year. Who knows what the decision will be, but we'll find out. All right, so binary files, what have I got? ELF stuff and PE stuff. In PE, I've got pe.h, gen main, and dump. So let me just start mapping this out. A map of object file tech. Let's So I've got PE. Let's do this like this. Let's really ham it up here. Uppercase that. Not enough. Let's do it this way. Macro. There we go. Oh, it doesn't work. Okay. I swear I won't play around like this for too long, but let me get it right. Okay, so that's the problem. Boom. Beginning, pound, end, pound, mark, end. Let's take this out to 70 and stop there. Now, let's see here. We've got PE. binary PE is the path. This is the PE tech. Is in binary PE. We have, so there's Mr. Forth PE.H and Mr. Forth PE.C, which gives something. Then there's dump.H and dump.C, which gives something. .H.C, which is about something. And there's pe.gen.main.c, which is about something. So we'll figure out what all of those are about later. In ELF, I've got ELF and an ELF dump, and gen doesn't exist. Now those have dependencies on okay. And then I think there's OBJ from raw. Okay, and there's another one around here somewhere. I just can't remember what I called it right off the top of my head. Self-image. Then there's the self-image layer in root. Mr. Forth self-image.h/.c. Okay. Okay. Now, I think that's a whole map of everything I've got, so I'm going to run through these and just refresh my memory by reading them, what they're kind of like. I'm going to read the headers and assume that the C files are what I predict. Might be a mistake, but usually, unless there's like a case like this where it's just a C file, usually when they pair off like that, there's nothing in the C file that's going to come out and surprise you. Except maybe a before main, I suppose, now, because I've added that concept. Well, anyway. Okay, so the way this whole thing works, you create a block context. User putter eval function. I just can't remember what that means. I wish I could remember. Oh, this is the conversion, right? So there are these different. So pointer is the word for my combined my it's my relocation concept. It's a pointer. So block is like a it's like a binary data assembling tool. F absolute F relative. Pointers point to a spot in the file. Array index. Man, I can't remember this stuff. I'm gonna have to read the C code for this part. What is this about? BL label from adder context from context to array base. Putter array index. Yeah, so we're making a new pointer and we're filling it out. So this is about constructing a pointer from a position to a position. Putter array index equals result plus 1. Is this an extension? Extra. Yes, when you allocate it, you can ask for extra. I see. Here there's no extra. Here there's no extra. Okay, so I went with inheritance, C++ style for some reason. Sometimes you just do weird stuff, and you don't know why. When you come back later, you go, why did I become a C++ programmer that day? I don't know. Maybe it was a good idea, but it's all fresh to me now. Array index. So the kind comes from the fact that it's an array index. Array base from size. I see. So it's pointing from this position to this position, and the kind of pointer we have is an array index. So it's an offset into an array. So in order to, this position is going to have to work out to be an element of an array. And whatever element it is, that index needs to get written here. That's the idea. All right. This is a file relative and file absolute pointer. These are the ones we can build in. Okay, yeah. Okay, I get it now. So each of these tells it a full linkage. I don't really have symbols here, right? I didn't go with a thing like an object file has. So object files have symbols and relocations separately, but this just has pointers, and each pointer is fully formed because the big difference is we're not linking blocks together here. The idea of this is that a block only points to other spots within its own context, whereas object files actually point to points inside other object files sometimes through symbols. That's the difference. Okay, got it. That's in my head now. This is binary block data assembling tool with relative with pointer relocation feature, basically. All right, let's take a look at these ones. PEH. This is, if I guess correctly here, I'm gonna just take the guess that this is all the types that it takes to describe a PE file. Yeah, it looks like I went pretty hardcore on this back in the day. I mean, I left a bunch of undone stuff because it's such a large area to cover. But this is just... And then the functions for accessing the string tables, basically. And some enum code conversions. Yeah. PE file and functions for string tables and other static properties of the Okay, now what is in the dump header? It's a main, so that's an entry point. This is, oh, this is elf dump. Can I get PE dump though? Is that also what PE dump is like? Is it also a main? Yeah. So PE dump is a program that presumably I can go into build fly, find pe.dump and build it. Great. And then I should be able to, right, here we go. Okay, checking something here. And go away. Build. PE dump exists right there. Oh, but you need the dot slash, of course. There we go. So this is the dumper I've got. You just put in the thing and it gives you all the stuff. Now we can do much better. We can compress the section table using the ASCII stuff. We can present all the imports using the new section table stuff, or the table printing stuff. I think all of this can be handled in a much more, like, this could definitely just be upgraded to be more directly useful. We could also add in options to not show the stuff that isn't useful and to configure all that somehow fluidly. So how much of the generator lives in main? That's the question I want to ask. So these form, it looks like an what exactly was I generating last? P data, exports and imports into R data. Looks like this was just program, test program for generating P or cough for PE cough file generation. This is just the same deal. I may have finished with the very basic parse here. Elf is a little bit easier in a lot of ways. So this might actually be good to program that parses and dumps an elf file. Okay. Now these implement raw data to object utility. And this needs a pass at some point for sure. And then the self-image stuff is the absolute most recent. It's the stuff I hacked together a week or two ago with the Magic ID system. All right. Um, so I think that's a good map. I'm gonna take a quick break now. We'll do 5 minute break. This is a little earlier than I usually do, but it's because we got a really good stopping point here. I'm gonna take a 5 minute break just to clear my head from the first step and think about what I want to do, and then I'll come back and think about it out loud some more. All right, 5 minutes. All right. So I need to think this through here. The map is a good starting point that I've got here, but what am I going to work on? I think the reason I felt like I should come here was, one, I'm now hacking the object files up with the Magic ID system, and I need to start seeing that. So I think what I will start with is these dumpers were originally written as sort of example parsers. Okay, I wanted something sitting around that shows me how to extract the structures from these files, but I didn't want that to be a library. And that's mostly because a library is a ton more work than an example program, and you always end up not needing most of what the library can do. Like, weird, annoying problems show up where if you want to make a library for parsing a file like this, then when you go to parse the header, you have to do all the things in the file. You got to go, oh, find this data structure, find that data structure. You don't know when you parse the header, if you're a library, if we're about to go read a couple, read the field that says what machine architecture this file is for, or if we're going to go scan through one of the data sections and read one of its symbols and bounce over to another object file somewhere. Like, there's complex differences between use cases, and parse a header throws all of the context away, and so it just has to do the whole thing. And so most cases of what you actually want to do with these are slim things. Like in the self-image case, what happened was I got the memory from the current process that describes the image of the executable itself that launched the process. And then, or at least it got the image of the, this gets the image of the current process. One thing I need to do at some point is learn how to do this, but with, oh no, here I get the module handle. Right, so this is the one that lets me get yes. So each module has its own copy of this function, which it then uses to locate. Okay. The module for itself. And then we get the process. So this is get my current module. I bet we can do this in a way that doesn't require each of them to have their own copy of this. But then the next thing that happens is it reads the data. And finally, you can see I just go and use the PE-DOS header directly. I don't have a library happening here, right? If we look at my PE.h, that's just like struct number 1, PE-DOS header. You put that there and you start working on it, right? So I didn't have an abstraction here that said, get me the header, the DOS header, or parse all the headers, get me the PE signature, whatever. I didn't have anything like that. Header. Section table. So here we get to the point of grabbing. So we're grabbing the section table, right? So if there had been a library, you could imagine. If there had been a library, you could imagine the way you might want it to work is that you'd be like, parse this file, give me the section table, let me scan it, whatever. But I didn't write any of that because this also like it inevitably does a lot more heavy duty work when it's in that library form than just this. And I don't know if I want to go down the road of trying to solve that because I spent years looking at it that way and I'm convinced it's an extremely difficult problem. I do have some new tools in my tool belt that might get me a little closer than I ever was before at being able to do a very low cost abstraction over that problem. But today is not the day that I want to tackle that possibility. What I want to do is think about how I would like to maintain stuff like this over time from now on. So the question is, am I really going to commit to always writing the full parser? So I've got the PE dump, and it's an example of how to parse, and it includes things like grabbing the DOS header. And I'm sure when I was doing this, I probably looked and checked like, oh, what is all this? And it's like, oh, well, here they're checking that and then grab that. So I did all of this more spread out here. I could have done it this way. So I probably actually didn't copy. I probably did it from chasing down the logic by hand. And I think the other issue is if I did make an abstraction that raced through all of this, right? If I said, hey, actually, look at this, practical use cases just want the cough header and all of this stuff, it's just weird format, handshaking stuff you have to get through, but it's not the payload. So why doesn't the abstraction just say, first things first, let's get you your cough header if we can? Problem with that is if I want to make a dumper, I might want to spell all that part out, and then abstracting it away means the dumper has to have a redundancy anyways, right? So figuring out where to abstract out this binary parsing stuff is regularly going to be annoying like this. So I suppose a little playful exploration of how I would think about doing this zero cost could be fun. It could become a rabbit hole that I would fall down for, like I said, a month of writing the DOS parser in an abstracted way that is also as close to zero overhead or like a controlled amount of overhead that I can live with. It's possible that that could be a good use of time or that it could just be a waste of time. And I can't know until I try. And I can't, my guess is like, I put it 50-50. I've got ideas that I think are fresh that might be relevant, but I can see blockers that are a little unfamiliar to me still and may not have an elegant solution yet. So it would be an exploration on a boundary there. Alternatively, I could just spend my time upgrading these dumpers. Like I could just decide, hey, we have this example code. The example code didn't even get used. I ended up parsing it manually again anyways, just from memory of how it works and from following what it says in the headers. Yeah, here it's actually throwing away all of that stuff, and here I spread it out. And it is one of the big things that is going to be tricky to skip. I mean, it's a totally different way of programming from what C does. Okay. All right. I'm kind of tearing myself up right now over this issue of duplicating it. Maybe I should just keep leaning into duplicating it because it has been fine so far. And the project of deduplicating it is interesting, but it's a distraction from my first purpose. I want to end up with, if nothing else, a tool that I can regularly grab for helping me navigate as I play with object files in the RPG simulator and try to hack together some cool features with them. So I just need good visualization, not a dumper. The dumper is kind of like a raw visualization. This is the information is here, but it is not actually practical to use this for rapid iteration on questions like, okay, did the new section show up where I think it would? Why is this thing missing? How big is the section? Like, if I have a few sections hacked in for special purposes all of a sudden, and I'm scrolling down to 5 and 6 and looking around and be like, oh, here's the one I need now. What's the V size is this, okay, and so that seems right. This isn't the right combo. I want to lay this out. Well, first of all, with these near the top, this can be hidden now. This can be hidden by default. Some of this could probably be kept. Yeah, we could find ways of toggling those, but this should be a table that I can see. This should be a table that I can see. Don't care as much. We could make a table for that, but probably we would hide it. And now the issue is if I start go in here and start bundling in the table printing stuff, this stops serving its original purpose of being the ground truth that I'm relying on. Like, this is sort of the template for how the code works, for how these patterns work. And it wants to be as uncomplicated and unentangled as possible with other purposes. That's why I didn't bother to print any more carefully than this for the visualization in the first place. So So what's something like dump but less rough? You know, a dump if dumping is rough, it's the rough first pass with no niceties and no design, just an information storage device really for the concepts of how to parse more than anything else. Then what's something that also um, that also captures the idea of outputting the information or reading it, diagramming it, charting it, graphing it, displaying it, organizing it, visualizing it, inspecting it, reading it, um, hmm. Um, mm, I could also rename this one and use the word dump for the new thing. It's a little bit more of a pain to do it that way, but I could call this just the parse. But that implies that it's like a library. Um, I do think I should rename this because I didn't know when I was looking at it initially that the dump, like what its status was unclear, and I think it should be more like pe.c and h should be our main two. It's unfortunate they don't go together when I use this dot trick. The fact that there's a generator library and a generator program is cool, but we're saying there's not going to be a parser library. That might be a part of the mistake, I suppose. I just hate going down that road because it's familiar enough for me to know that it's not something you can ever put together in a satisfying way. But I'm feeling the pull to look at how that would work more than most other things here. The issue would be if I name this as something like PE example. So this would be PE parse example or PE. Yeah, I think parse example would be the right name. Then it's not a reusable library because it's an example. It's a program, which is fine, but it's only a program so that you can run it and see the results. And the output isn't very carefully structured, right? That makes sense. So this could be called PE parse example. And then the good one would be PE dump. I think renaming this is the right thing to do one way or the other. Before I think about naming the other one, let's rename this because I want it to have the word example in it now. Those are good. Parse example lowercase dump parse example dump 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 parse dump. Okay. So there's the parse, and then the thing underneath that is just the dump path, which sits there as a secondary function to the main point of all of this, which is to be a parse example, which lives here at the top. But we kind of need the dump because it completes the circle on telling us what how to type each piece when we look at it. And so it is part of the interpretation path. I think it contains information there. So, ooh, how big is that? Interesting. Okay, so that's the parse example. And I think one thing that I'm seeing, I'm going to do this a little bit later. But like this was originally the home base of the whole binary file project. I'm gonna just come up here and be like binary.h, or we need like Mr. Fourth binary.h, and we'll just leave a to-do right there. Like, it doesn't actually need to do anything else right now, but I want to keep that there instead of in any of these files. Now, somewhere around here, I still have reference to pe.dump. Yeah, I actually need to do it without the second dot. All of these need to become pe.parse. Name it parsecs. Parse example.c is parsecs. Run dump. Run dump 2. You guys can go away. Run dump. Yeah, you're out. Get out of here. Okay. Parsecs. Nice. And then run parsecs. Cool. So there's our parse example. Let me go back to my map here. So what I did here was I went okay. So presumably I should do this. I should come over here and leave some to-dos in the parse example that are actually about the parse example. And that's this. I want to, in this file, renaming pass pe dump to something new. And then I want to improve the quality of the example code. I didn't know this was example code before because I was just hacking together the correct thing. Now it needs to serve as the exemplar that I'll copy into other use cases. Hey there, Taylor. I'm working on this object file parsing stuff, and I just realized this morning that you asked like forever ago how to use obj from raw. And I didn't answer because I know that there's missing documentation that I didn't write down anywhere, and I forget. So like I'm on the path to being able to actually let other people use this stuff, but I'm getting there. And today, it turns out I'm struggling with deciding whether or not to create a reusable layer for parsing, or to just let it duplicate, because I know we were recently talking about the whole ingesting libraries thing. This is an example where it's like, I don't even know how to form a deduplication of this. The only way to make it work is, sometimes parsing an image is about going to find the section table to grab something out of that. Sometimes it's about checking what architecture the image is. Sometimes it's about grabbing the name of the debug information, and which things you have to parse and how to do that quickly change every time. And so how you abstract the path through the headers and the data structures to what you want without bundling in unnecessary work is really unclear to me. And so I'm debating kind of doing what you were talking about, but like I think even a step further to having multiple copies of the same library, so to speak, or the same example code ingested in and used in separate places. Yeah, that's the typical approach, is just stick it into a U8 array and then compile it in. That like is fine. It always just seems a little funny. Yeah, I think before I recommend anyone switching to it, I need to upgrade, because I had just barely hacked together a working way to assemble object files. And Uh, and so throwing a data blob into one was about the most I could do. Before I actually hand off a tool to people to use, I'd like to be able to feel a stronger mastery over the format than I have, just so that I know more surely like where people are going to run into failures and stuff like that. But if you are patient, I'm sure it's going to come. I'm sure it's going to come. This is kind of going to be the year of taking the first pass of object file tech and turning it into actual, hopefully like working partial linker style stuff like that. Except I'm gonna, instead of a linker command line tool, it's more like a linker database of knowledge that can be reused for all kinds of purposes. Okay. Anyway, there's the parse example to dos. That one is good to go. Now I want to go in and build like some kind of visualizer, right? So I want okay, now we're coming up with to-dos for the whole project. So if I go back to binary.h, yes, question, PE-cough visualization, diagnostics, tool, PE format, error feedback. All right, we are going to back off of this. This was not working. I think the next big steps here are I need a good ASCII visualizer now for PE and cough. I also need to do renaming pass over Mr. Forth elf.dump, similar to the pe.dump to pe.parsecs. I just mean a visualizer that's not a graphical program. I mean a dumper, essentially, except that I am going to put it into nice looking tables and stuff. I'm not really sure what to call that. And then okay, here we go. Linker. Debug information. When we unpack that, we'll open up those guys. Okay. Okay, that's mostly it, except I want to think about PE-cough linker. Before we get to the PE-cough linker, or somewhere in that process, I also want to get the PE-cough OBJ from raw utility in better shape. And in addition to all of that, we need at some point to deal with the self-image layer. Now this is more like a layer which depends on the binary stuff more so than it's a layer that is a part of the binary stuff. But it also binds in an OS dependency that I don't actually have any abstraction for. So I think over here, separately from this, there's the self-image to-dos. Let's actually put them right here. To-dos for the self-image layer. Decide where to place the abstraction for operating system access of the image data, something like that. And then it might be useful to say, like, can we yeah, I just need to figure out how to if I want this bundled layer of OS access and parse as a decomposition, or if I am looking for a specific kind of parser layer or layers separate from the OS abstraction. Because it could just be that I end up wanting several different styles of parsers and then an accessor to grab the data in the first place. So I go to the operating system abstraction, grab the data, and then I've got a quick access parser that I stitch them together, and that's how you do this. And so there's no need for this layer to exist at all. It would actually, this would just be the fact of composing two of these side by side, one line after the other. But if I start going down this road and I keep them fused together, I could really see that leading to some problems. Like, I could end up in lots of situations where I'm thinking of a way to build a program that involves very deeply parsing the image. And I've already built this self-image layer, but it's not optimized for complex deep parsing. It's thinking of itself as being used for one-off quick parses, and therefore you end up not being able to use the layer and need a whole separate layer for the different purpose, right? Whereas if you could just grab your own image data and then pass it through a parser, yeah, I think that's what I would like to be able to imagine doing. So I think that's the right place to put those to-dos. That puts me now in the position of having a to-do list. I'm not really sure where to put that. That's more of an abstract thought than anything else. I think this is the right amount of stuff to put down. Now, in terms of what I plan to do, I think right now, we can talk about today and the next few days and see how things play out. I think I can definitely do this better visualizer. And before I get on to the linker or worrying about elf stuff again, I also want to do the self-image stuff sooner, because that's a part of what we're playing with the Magic ID system. So these are the two pieces for just basically catching up to the leap ahead I made in throwing tricks into the bag with the object files. Was when I made the Magic ID system. That was the leap ahead, and there are some issues that I'd like to address with making that move through this step and these steps. And if those get resolved, those are the most proximal thing, then the next longer goal would be able to build up these kinds of linker technologies. Because one of the things I would do under this would be to remove unneeded data sections from Magic ID. Something like that. Like after linking the exe, I might want to just go in and erase all of the ID sections that I don't need to have in the final image. And then the only problem is, how do you do that and actually get the thing to resolve correctly? And that's where we have to learn how to reach in and edit things like the relocations directly. Something like that. Okay. Okay. There we go. That's the entire program of stuff I need to do regarding the Magic ID system itself. These things and these things, and I don't need to do all of them before I get back to RPG Simulator necessarily, although it would probably be the more responsible thing to do to see how far I can push that. I would settle for doing just these and deciding, if I took a look at this part, that if it might turn out to be too all-consuming, and that I might need to come back to that later with a different, like, more baby step problem than that to make progress in that direction. I'm not sure, but this is the most I want to do right now before I get back to the RPG Simulator, and this part might just be an exploration and then get cut. I think that's the plan. So let's start with this today. Now I have to decide what I actually want to call it. Is it a visualizer? Is it a reader? Is it Mr. Is it like that PE read? PE look? PE viz? PEC? PE table? PE chart? PE display? PE peak? PE dump? I feel like I'm drawn to using the name dump again. Maybe this is a good time to pull up a thesaurus, though. First of all, how do you spell thesaurus? There we go. That doesn't seem right. There we go. Yeah, the real world doesn't really use the word dump that way. I don't want to do that. How about display? What about visualize? View. Look, picture, glimpse. Show, opening, design, illustrate, range of vision. Glimpse. Glimpse and look, and peak was one I was thinking about. Look. View might be my favorite. Print. I could do print. But that feels more like a code function than a command. What if I call it ASCII or like terminal read? Table from PE. Okay, I want to go with table. Now we're going to do this kind of off the parse example for now. Although, should I do an upgrade to the parse example first? It's not really what I'm in the mood for is the only problem with that. Speaking of mood, I need to go get a quick snack or something, I think. One sec. Okay, I'm realizing it might be a good time for me to have lunch soon, but I'm also a little bit in this locked in state on wanting to build this table thing. I got pictures in my head for it right now. So I think what I'm going to do is just get quiet and less chatty and plug ahead on some programming for a bit and check in on chat again before I go. All right. We will try a different style of music today. Yeah, so I'm gonna end up wanting to design this with some arguments and stuff. RMK, yeah, there's a Forcoder community fork. Do you know where the Forcoder Discord is? If you go there, they can link you to it, and if there's anything, like I don't run that one, so like I don't even build it myself. I just use the old school one I built. But the community folks there can definitely point you to it and get you set up if you're interested in that. Okay. It's a good place to start. Parse the arg, command line args, get the command line, set up the arguments. Okay, input file name. Okay. Okay. Buildfly doesn't know yet. But we're not talking about table.c table. Yuck. Okay. So there's our section count. And a stream like we have right here.
We'll see about that one. There it is.
So it's probably here. I probably don't clear the stream quite right. Ugh. Okay. I think that's good for now. Let's take a look here. I've got new to-dos all over the place in this one. I think think I'm good with that though. Like that's the basic tool I need for what I'm doing. I guess the main concern I'm actually discovering here is that the hardest thing about using these tools is always getting into a context where I can run the command that I want and the executable. And I'm feeling like maybe something I want to start doing is adding all of my utilities to the path. You know what I mean? Like I kind of want to not have to be sitting here working on RPG sim, and you know I know over here in build there's gonna be a RPG. There's gonna be RPG new.exe, and then I'm gonna want to RPG sim new exe. I wanna look at that, right? And so I'm sitting in here, and I want to go, you know, pe table build slash RPG sim dot new.exe, and it won't know what pe table means, and so then I have to, you know, the reason I don't use these tools fluidly is because they're not like properly installed to be findable, I think. So maybe what I actually want to solve more than anything else is the ability to solve this problem by adding this stuff to the path. In scripts, this isn't so bad because I just put in the path to bind it in ForCoder. But it's kind of annoying that this isn't more accessible everywhere. So maybe that's what I want to track down as a practical improvement to my workflow interface here. But before I go on any farther with the ASCII visualizer, which is basically just the table pecoff table tool, the other thing I want is to come back and work on the self-image issues, and I think I'll do that this afternoon after I've had lunch. So now's a good time for me to wrap up. Let me take a look at the chat. Hi, Young Lane. I see that you stopped by. I was having a little bit of a decreased chatting time, so I could wrap up some stuff, and I'm gonna head out for now. But good to see you. And yeah, I'm gonna be back in a little bit to do that self-image stuff, and see y'all then, I suppose.